Developing successors takes time. There's no shortcuts. Experience is not gained on Tuesday. And if you cut them short, you also really hurt their effectiveness for the long haul. First and foremost, selection needs to be based on the most qualified person or persons. Who's most qualified, not based on age, position in the family, years of service, etc., which is what the tendency, the eldest gets put in that position, or the person who's been there the longest, or something like that. And all too often, estate planning is done, the stock is transferred out to multiple family members, and so everybody's got a piece of the rock. And now they're saying we've got to set it up from an estate planning standpoint as to who's going to be the successor if mom and dad are gone, and knowing that estate planning means we set it up as if something happened today. Well, in way too many situations I've been in, they're making an estate planning decision, and at the same time they're making a decision about who is the most qualified long before anybody's qualified. You know, several situations I've been in recently where the successors are in their 20s, and yeah, there's an assumption that this person is more likely to get there than others, but they're so far away from really having that be an assured position that they've gotten hung up on the wrong thing. So what I'm trying to say, make sure you've got the right person or persons in that. But I also want to go to the fact that it doesn't have to be just one person. You know, the idea that there's only one leader at the top is not necessarily accurate. I can sit there and think of many family situations I've had the privilege of working with where you had a couple of brothers or brothers and sisters or whatever, where they happen to be in the car business, so the manufacturers required that somebody had 51%. But from the standpoint of the partners, the siblings, they saw that as just purely doing what the manufacturer required. They treated each other as 50-50 partners, and they identified the areas of the responsibility within the business that they were each going to take on. They worked together to work through all the issues. They had the beautiful privilege of working side by side with their siblings, working through issues, managing the problems together, sharing the load together, having being in a position to run the business with not just one person at the helm. And that was very, very successful. So I don't think you should necessarily assume it's got to be just one person. The other thing to remember is that developing successors takes time. There's no shortcuts. Experience is not gained on Tuesday. It takes time to get the person, and if you cut them short, you also really hurt their effectiveness for the long haul. So one of the things we've done is to develop a mentor team around the successor that are senior managers who can hold them accountable, who will help them stay focused on the things they need to do. Also developing a successor development program where that individual knows the steps they've got to take, where they're going next, what kind of things they have to do to be able to move on to the next level, what kinds of accountability they're going to be subject to, etc. The more of that stuff that is worked on and focused on and becomes at the center of the planning, the better chance that person is going to be successful for the long haul, and that you'll have the right person leading the company when the time comes. You know, we're talking to a business owner who is still very active in the business, and he says, what's your plan? He said, I don't have one because I don't have any successors that are ready to take over. And depending on the personality, that owner may be very nervous about it. What do I do? One guy said, I guess I got to sell. And I said, why is that? He says, well, I don't have a successor. And I said, well, right now you have a pretty good situation. You've been telling me all about the fact that you've got a general manager and a CFO that are phenomenal at what they do. They run the business highly effectively. You have the freedom of being gone for weeks at a time, even going to Europe and so forth, and the company's making money hand over fist. Sounds like a pretty good situation. Why do you want to sell? And he said, well, I really don't want to sell, but I don't have a successor. And I said, well, I think the key here, having talked to these managers, is they want to stay. In this particular case, they were in their early 50s and he was in his late 60s. And their concern was that he would all of a sudden decide to sell, and they would be, short of wanting to retire. And right now they would be very desirable and marketable, but 7, 8, 10 years from now, not so much. And they'd all of a sudden be stuck. And so what we did was we developed a plan where, number one, they would get a piece of the action as long as they stayed. That would be set aside for them. And then number two, if he ever sold, they would get a percentage of the sale price. So they were incentivized to stay and work through the sale, etc. If the boss were alive, they got one percentage. If the boss were deceased and they were having to do it on behalf of the family, then they got an even bigger percentage, which thus, because they would be much more needed in that situation. So they were very, very pleased with that. The company continued to run for about another 10 years. And eventually he did sell, but they were able to stay together for a much, much longer time than they had thought they would. Another situation we're dealing with where the owner is looking at, he's getting up in age and so forth, and he's concerned that he doesn't have his successor. He has children that are considering it, but as of this point, they have not chosen to come forward, and they're just trying to figure it out. So we've gone a little different route. Number one is we've worked real hard to develop a succession bridge among his key managers and to elevate their responsibilities within the company, and to work hard at establishing a corporate board for the company that these key managers would report to, because it's the objective of this particular owner that he wants to keep the business going for the sake of his business family, all the people who work there. And so he's hoping that he'll be in a position where he has the confidence that his management team and board can run this business without him, and that the family can continue to keep it in the business. He's concerned if they sold, all of his life's work, etc., would go down the drain, and so he's looking for a different approach. And in this case, it's viable. Every situation is obviously different, and we're working to try and put him in a position where he can keep the business and not have to sell it, even though he doesn't have a successor. And possibly his kids will decide to join it, but they may not. And you have to look and see whether this non-family management team concept and board concept will work.